value your own experiences and what you bring to the table.
Hmm.
Because whenever I started off, you know, I I had, you know, even though I was really good at what I did, it's like I undervalued my own contributions to the whole thing.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Brian Weathers. And Brian started out his journey in high school, went to a small high school in southern Indiana. And then after that, went to Purdue and got an engineering degree. It was an eye opener on the level of competition in college for grades and learning, and learned that you didn't have to have perfect grades, but graduated nonetheless, and went out, got a job, started in big corporate, and then did small job in engineering consulting. Took the job at the smaller business and worked there for about 15 years, and then ended up getting a divorce. Wife moved a few hours away, needed a job that paid more and had more time off, and started the consulting firm, which with process design, which is what he does today. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Brian.
Thank you, Devin.
So now I just took a much longer journey and condensed it into a 30 or 45-second version. But why don't we rewind and unpack that a bit and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started in going to high school in a small school in southern Indiana.
Yeah, you certainly did take about like 20 years worth there and condensed it down to about 30 seconds. But
Absolutely. Well, that's I guess my innate ability or skill. So it's
there you go.
everybody's life can be condensed down into a few seconds. But let's unpack that a bit. So yeah, tell us how your journey got started.
Yeah, so I knew I was going to be an engineer whenever I was 10. Amazingly enough, I pretty much it's weird to think about because you just kind of let a 10-year-old decide what you were going to do for the next 30 years of your life or so, which is
Hmm.
where we are now. And you know, basically there was of a lot to do there. You didn't have a whole lot of examples per se of of what an engineer did or anything like that. And so, you went into college and like you said, you're a big fish in small pond syndrome, and you wind up going to a big school like Purdue. You're in honors engineering, and it really, to me, it was the first time in my life. Whenever I was in college, it was the first time in my life that I'd ever been like just average academically from
Hmm.
that standpoint. And so, it 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 helped me a lot because what it got rid of was it got rid of cockiness. I'll put it that way. Because it's real easy whenever you're really good academically and things aren't challenging. It's real easy to get to think of yourself up here, but then that freshman year, all of a sudden you're just the average in the honors engineering program, and you're realizing, oh, it's like I've got to work. So, so that was good. So,
No, I think
um,
for a lot of people, you go to college or go to high school and you're kind of the top of the class, and then you go to college, you're like, man, everybody's as smart as I am. How does this happen? How did this happen? So it's always
yeah,
it's probably a good wake up call, and one that helps you to realize you don't have to be perfect, but if you work hard and do your best, then it typically works out. So now
yeah.
you go off and you went and studied engineering in at Purdue. Is that right?
Agrobiological engineering. I'm going to put a shout out to that. If you want to have a great career in process design of biological processes, ag and biological engineering is where you want to go.
Awesome. Well,
And
so
yeah,
now so you went and studied that, and that's any engineering degree. I always give kudos. I got an electrical engineering, so not quite as cool as
oh,
yours.
nice.
But so you go and get the degree, and you're coming out of school, and so you make it through, figure out that how to compete with the competition, and get through college, and now you're coming out. Now, where did you go from there?
Yeah, so my first 2 weeks out of school, I went to my parents' couch. Job prospects, it's like while the job prospects were very good, I had distinct issues with being able to communicate well. I
Hmm.
get very nervous. I get kind of like jumpy a little bit, and that came across in the interviews that I did. And it wasn't without like much practice for me to be able to get over my nerves to where, hey, you know what? I was able to get used to going to the interviews and all of those things. And so coming out of college, the opportunities were either I could work at Smucker's, which is, a pretty big jam and jelly company,
Hmm.
or there was a little small engineering firm uh, that did something called CIP, clean in place, and they called me up, and I did well in the interview and all of those things, and um, I basically I decided to go with them, even though they were paying me probably about $12,000 less a year.
Hmm.
And the reason why I did that was because at that moment I was like, you know what? There's all sorts of opportunity here to learn and to develop into something that is bigger than say a salary.
Hmm. No, and I think that I think that's a good one. I think a lot of times early on in your career, people end up going the other way, which is, hey, I can make more money. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, and as long as they'll pay me a bit more, that's where I'm going. But I think that there's a lot you quickly find out that enjoying your job and be able to do something that you love and also be able to expand and to learn and to grow offset some of that financial difference. And so you go to the smaller firm, and what did you do there, and kind of how long were you there for?
Yeah, so I was a process engineer there, and I worked there for about 15 and a half years. Um, I went along the pathway, of getting better and better, and then eventually, you know, as an engineer's career develops, you start off and your first 3 years is basically devoted to figuring out, hey, how to be an engineer.
Hmm.
Your next few years are going to be, hey, how do you manage yourself? It's like, you can't manage a team yet or anything like that. You're just basically figuring out, hey, how do I manage my own work? I've got my own small project, and how do I make this happen for a client? And then, you're once you've got about maybe 7 or 8 years in, all of a sudden, you start learning how to manage teams. You start learning what to do really well during a project as far as like being able to talk with your client, keep them happy, keep the team underneath you working toward a single goal of getting the project done and being able to do it in an efficient manner. That's one of the like for our business, that's one of the key things because what you're doing is as a consulting firm in food and pharma, you're basically taking a technical position and all of those things, but you also have to apply customer service. You have to also apply people skills. You need to be
Hmm.
able to you need to be able to talk well, which I had real struggles with because I I am naturally an introverted person, but I have to force myself to like go and do talking and all of those things. And so really, it's a skill set that you develop over time, and you may be weak in some areas and strong in other areas to start with, but you got to figure out how to get yourself up to an acceptable level in like a few different areas.
Hmm.
If that
No,
makes sense.
makes sense. And I think that, to figure out what are the areas that you're strong in, what are the areas that you're weak in, and then how you either compensate for that. And sometimes it's, hey, I'm going to learn those skills, I'm going to work on it. And other times it's, hey, I'm going to hire someone that can fill in those gaps that maybe I can't do as well and they can do better. And you got to kind of figure out that balance of where your skill sets are, where you're weak, where you want to improve on, and then and how you fill that in. So you did that. It sounds like you were at the smaller bit or consulting firm for 15 plus years. Got an opportunity to grow and expand and otherwise improve. Now, as you were there, walk us through a little bit of what led you to going out your own way, and kind of what was the changes in life that prompted that.
Like you said earlier, it's like I went through a divorce, and there was quite a bit of distance, uh, physical distance between myself and my children at the time. And you have 3 weeks of vacation, and you're not making enough to be able to actually do the things that you need to actually be able to go and visit your kids every other weekend, because they're 4 or 5 hours away. You don't have the time to just be able to take off a Thursday and a Friday with that to be able to go do that. And then at that time it was pre-COVID, so you didn't have the mobility of where you wanted to work either.
Hmm.
It's like, I'm going to tell you, probably had COVID happened in 2011, I probably wouldn't have left,
No,
because you got to have,
yeah.
yeah, safety is a driver to stay, but then whenever you get forced, it's like necessity is the mother of invention, right? So that's pretty much how that happened.
No, I think it makes sense. Sometimes, and it's always interesting. By all means, divorce isn't necessarily a fun thing, not something you plan on or want to go through. And yet, sometimes the hard things in life that force a change to get you out of a normal zone can lead to, fortuitous opportunities, or otherwise present to, something that will end up being beneficial in the long run, even though it's painful in the short run. So now
Yeah.
you're going through the divorce, you're saying, okay, want to do a little bit of a change with whether it's lifestyle, it's whether it's I want to work, do the work that I want to do, have the hours that I want, be able to work at the location I want. So you kind of go through all of those things, and as you're kind of trying to figure that all out, what did you settle on, or what did you end up doing or where did you end up heading, or making the change to?
So what you realized very quickly was that, what, you think that you're going to have all of this, all of this time, you think that you're going to have all of this ability to do it where you want, when you want. But then whenever your first project is a year-long startup in Puerto Rico,
Hmm.
guess what? You are working 80 hours a week. You are basically having to be at the facility, and you're realizing that what? Oh man, all the responsibility now falls on me too.
Hmm.
That was a little bit of I won't say it was a shock, but whenever you haven't ran a business before, you're trying to figure out and muddle through all of those things. And I really am thankful for my father on that, because he's a retired school teacher and has a very analytical mind. And while he had never ran a business before, in those early days, he handled payroll. He handled a whole lot of things that I just didn't have time to even delve into.
Hmm.
And he made the connections down in Puerto Rico with our uh, with the person that became our accountant, Karen Diaz, and now we hired her full time like 4 years ago as our CFO. But so as you go along, you kind of you piece together this team with the ultimate goal of you trying to step back to finally figure out how to like get time and all of those things, and have it not be quite too late.
No, I definitely get that. And, I think that one of the interesting things you look at, you read the books, you watch the movies or the TV shows, and you get a bit of a false sense of what it is to be an entrepreneur. Not that it's a bad thing, and I love it, and it's
Oh,
one. But you think, oh, I'll just work a couple of hours a week, and then I'll go out to lunches, and I'll go play, and I'll have all this money flowing in, and well, maybe there's 1% of people that do that. Most of the time, it's more work, it's more time, and it's more energy, but there's also a sense of reward. What you build is what you
yeah.
own, and what you are able to do, is able, or you get to set the direction and the course for, what you're wanting to do. And so so you jump into that, say, okay, I'm going to make that shift, that balance. You start your own firm and you start to get into it. But how did it go? Was it one where it was took off like a rocket ship and you had more money than you knew it, to raining down from the skies? You're always teetering on the verge of bankruptcy and thinking you did or made the wrong choice, or somewhere in between? Walk us through a little bit of, as you got started, how it went for you.
As we got started, we were very fortunate and very blessed. I will tell you this. Um, I we had a project with a large company that I had worked with probably about, well, all 15 years of my career. And I was very much an expert in my field in for that company, and they knew me really well.
Hmm.
And um, I asked the project manager, "Hey, would you consider it okay if I were to step out just on my own as an individual, as an independent contractor?" And I had a friend, Berto Rotas, who uh, he's I met him in 2004 down in Puerto Rico, and we went through a startup of a facility together. And he's one of my best friends, and
Hmm.
he let me subcontract to him, to his company that was already registered with this company. If you don't know, large companies, you have to be on the vendor list to be able to make things happen. You don't get to just go and say, "Hey, knock at the door, I'm here." No, you have to go through a procurement process. You have to basically validate that you're a company, all of those things. If I hadn't have had Umberto Rosas there to actually like let me get started well underneath his company, none of this would have happened. The other thing was, that the project manager at that time, and I'll be forever indebted to him, because we started off with a group of three people on that project, and it was myself, uh, uh, another guy, Michael Huertas, and Owen Bear, and and it just so happened that those guys were available, and they were some of my best friends from an engineering world standpoint, that had worked for other companies, and they took the risk of like actually coming and working with me. And so we had those three people, and we did a good enough job on our first project that eventually it turned into where you had eight people working at that facility, and we were there for a year and a half. Now you've gotten up to eight people, and you're thinking, "Hey, this is really good, really good." Well, eventually that plant gets up and running, and you've worked yourself out of a job. So after, we were getting done there in July,
Hmm.
and um, and then we're getting done there in July, and around June, I got a call, and it was from my friend Rafael Mero. I'm letting everything out here,
Hmm.
but Rafi was like, "Hey, we've got this project. It's a greenfield site. A greenfield site means it's a new facility, and that facility was right around, overall, like the cost for that facility was in the neighborhood of $1 billion or whatever. So it was a very large project. And he was like, "Hey, there's two spots for the CIP team that are still open." CIP, for those who don't know, um, it stands for clean in place. And so whenever you have a processing system and you dirty it up in your process, you have to clean it automatically to get it back to the reset state so you can run the process again. And
Hmm.
so we designed that system, and then we get get it all started up and all of those things. And so there was a spot for two people, and in July we would only have three out of the eight people working because our project there was going to end.
Hmm.
We got onto this job, and then you know we did really well, and that company let us build up a staff of 10 at that project.
Hmm.
Had it not been for a connection of friendships, because Rafi I knew from a project I did back in 2008 at that time, and right now at this point it's 2015, so I've known Rafi for 7 years. So if I hadn't have had those connections to get it started, none of this would have been possible.
Hmm. No, I think, it's interesting. Sometimes it's the product, sometimes it's the connections, and, oftentimes it's ability to network and find those people that are going to be able to help you to expand or grow the business that you otherwise, may not have that ability on your own, that can make the big difference between a startup going well and a startup, being or taking a much longer time if it can get up and going. And so you have those opportunities, you work hard, you get the business up and going. And that was, around the COVID time frame. So what, 2-3 years ago, somewhere in that frame?
Nah, that was back 2013,
Oh, okay.
2015 or so. We've been at this for a little while. Now what happened though was in 2017, um, you know, I uh we went through a shift in our company where I bought out my business partner at the time or whatever back in 2017. And that was an interesting time because we went through a whole like reconditioning of how we did things or what have you and what we focused on.
Hmm.
And so, you know, expanding more on that, basically um, shifting, shifting, trying to shift it away from myself as far as being the point man on everything.
Hmm.
That's what we started doing back in 2017. We haven't gotten there all the way yet, but we're most of the way there.
No, makes sense. Sounds like it's been a good journey of evolution, but also has worked out pretty well for you. So now catch us up a bit. Where is it at today, and how have things gone, and kind of where do you see things head in the next 6 to 12 months?
So, like I said, back in 2014, we had about three people, and we have roughly about 30 people now in our company. So, I mean, it's grown. There's uh, we've kind of shifted a little bit, like I said, in a management style to to instead of me being a focal point of every decision, we're trying to get it to where we have management groups within our organization. One might be for administration, one might be for sales and marketing, one might be for the engineering product or whatever. As far as like you know making sure our deliverables quality is really good and all of those things.
Hmm.
And um, that that came about from hey, you got to a certain point where you just felt overwhelmed, and it was really like all of the things that you had to do as an entrepreneur slash organizer of the business and president of the company. It's too much for one person to handle, and so that was our way of being able to get responsibilities off of me, and then B, um, tying in other people into um, into you know furthering them up the chain of management within our company and giving them more responsibilities.
Hmm.
Yeah, put it that way.
No, makes perfect sense. And so now, as we've kind of reached the present day of your journey and walking through that a bit, great time to transition to the two questions always asked towards the end of each episode. So we're going to jump to those now. So the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
So I thought about this some this morning. I asked our CFO this morning, actually. I said, "Hey, what was our worst business decision?" And I could think of three that like popped out of me, but it all came down to one certain item. And my wife will attest to this because we have different approaches and different styles.
Hmm.
I am very much an optimistic person, and I will always look for the good in every situation, and that also transcribes to people. And so for myself, um, I I gave away my trust too easily.
Hmm.
Now that's a hard line to walk because whenever you think about that, you know, you have to trust business partners. You have to trust you have to trust the people that work for you. Otherwise, you won't have a workplace because guess what? Everybody's going to leave if you don't trust
Hmm.
them. You have like if you go onto a project and have partners in that project, say you've got another firm, all of those spots are places where you have to like give your trust.
Hmm.
And there were times where I would let myself be unprotected. I'll put it that way.
Hmm.
And it was the nature of who I am.
No, and I
There's
know
a
that.
roundabout answer.
No, I think that's a good answer. That one's an area that there are certainly a lot of people make mistakes because on the one hand, you kind of or you get to a point a lot of times with business, you can't do it all yourself. And yet as you turn it over and as you try and establish that trust, it also opens it up to, do people do it as well as you can? Do they get it or done? Are you getting what you pay for? And it just kind of is that balance.
I,
And I think everybody always makes mistakes there, and yet you also learn a lot, and it's a good area to improve and become better. So I think that's a great takeaway. Second question that I now always ask is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
so I thought about this one a little bit too. And I'm going to say value your own uh, value your own experiences and what you bring to the table.
Hmm.
Because because whenever I started off, you know, I I had, you know, even though I was really good at what I did, it's like I undervalued my own contributions to the whole thing.
Hmm.
I undervalued myself from a standpoint of you know what? Hey, you know how to lead a team. You know how to do all of these things. And whenever you look at like early on, you know, I was I was having to sacrifice my own time down in Puerto Rico. I was one that was like traveling and being away from my family still. And I was doing all those things, and I'm going to say that I didn't set a high enough price for myself as far as like what that meant.
Hmm.
And so, again, it leads back to like just just being protective of your own self, even though whenever you're in a whenever you're in a partnership or if you're in a company overall, you still have to, like I said, it's a fine line because I'm not saying, hey, go be selfish, because if you're selfish, that's not going to work.
Hmm.
But if you don't value your contributions enough, if you don't value yourself enough, you'll feel like you lost a piece.
Hmm. No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. So, well, now as we are wrapping towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
You can always go to our website. It's hvwsolutions.com. And you can check out our staff there. You can check out kind of what we do. If we're a fit for you, it would be great. So
awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, make a great connection. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So
yeah.
with that, as we now wrap up, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So let's go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help with along your journey with patents, trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
All right. Thank you, Devin.